So the seeing of non-duality, seeing of the non-dual, is the seeing that there is no one. That there never was anyone. There never will be. So it's a shift in perspective. So in a way it's already the case. So everything's already perfected. And yet there's this recognition that occurs somehow, this recognition that changes everything. So there's a before and there's an after in that sense, even though that's story in a sense, but things are never the same again. And it can happen in two events, or it can happen very, very slowly. People can slide into this, or it can be a shock. And the first seeing is generally a seeing of emptiness, which is a seeing that there's nothing, absolutely nothing, no people, no chairs, no tables, no world, and yet all this phenomenon is arising at the same time. So it's seeing that form and the formless are one, and that is experienced through the mind. For a start, is just arising. The mind thoughts, the identity falls away. The identity was never there was no identification, so thoughts are not who I am. There is no I. They just seem to be arising. And the body, it seemed to be appearing. And it can be seen visually also, that the body isn't there. It can be sensed, felt as well. There's a lightness of being. It's like being spirit, if you like, just being emptiness, being the timeless. So it's quite, if you don't know what this is, if you've never heard of non-duality, the seeing of emptiness can be very simple, or it might be a shock, but it can be very simple in that it's not necessarily seen as good or bad, it's just it seems more like a loss of self, but it's not a loss in a sense, it's just after seeing through, there's desires tend to fall away, and life is lived, almost just going through the motions of life, so there's no attachment to anything. It feels very like just going through the motions, seeing but not purchasing anything in a sense, because nothing can add to you anymore. It's like experience doesn't add anything. There's no the highs and lows tend to collapse in that to a certain extent, and so if you're very desire driven or very hedonistic, that can fall away and you can be left quite rudderless, and that can feel kind of strange, but okay. So it could be a relief to be rid of all that desire, and life just goes on. And then, if you're lucky, unconditional love is seen. And if you've never heard of non-duality, you will know that something quite significant has happened, because it's joy it's causeless joy, it's an overflowing of love, it's the division between inner, outer, here, there, everything is so gone, but what is replaced, what was always the case, in fact, is just this radical acceptance, this absolute intimacy with all of life, which is what you are. It's not an identity, but it's much better than an identity. So, and the stillness is seen. So it's seen physically as well. It's the sacred dimension is restored to life. So it's everywhere. It's everywhere you look is seen, the perfection of everything, which has no opposite. It is just. It is heaven and earth, basically. Seeing everything for the first time is quite breathtaking. In a way, it's lucky that over time this tends to calm down a bit, otherwise you may not move. You might just sit in one spot forever. So there's this absorption that collapses from the absorption in the mind to the absorption in what is, which, so it's not just seeing is intensified and perfected, but it's also, there's a feelingness to this. It's absolute rest and it's absolute fulfillment. And so there tends to be a honeymoon period with this where you just want to sit around and be absorbed by what you're looking at. Outside nature is amazing, like seeing a tree for the first time, seeing a sky for the first time, and which is not the same as a tree before awakening, and not the same sky, and it's not the same flowers, and it's the table is not the same table, and that's with the absence of the mind. So the mind tends to, it can very often collapse in this. For some people it continues, but it's slowed down. There's always a difference in the mind. The mind, the ego, is now in the background. So time appears in the timeless. It's life, the character continues to live in time, but that's accessed much less often. So the story appears and disappears, but it's really just about being where you are. So the rest is where you are. So that's where meaning in life is no longer something that's sought, because it is more than enough. It is, there's no need to move to, there's no need for diversion. So a lot of our activities for diversion will collapse in that as well. Perhaps you won't want the TV on, you won't, there's no need to distract yourself from what is, because, so it's, and there's a real divine quality to that. It's like everything is holy, everything is alive, and you may want to talk about this and you might find that nobody wants to listen, but so, and also you may remember that, particularly in that seeing, if you remember this as a child, that the memories might come back of that you were, this wholeness was already known. It was known when you were a kid. It was known before we were seduced out of our wholeness into the idea of here and there, me and you, and so the sense of location is gone. there's no one in here, there's no one out there, there's just this character who appears, and it's no longer belonging to anyone, which isn't a loss. It's not like life becomes less important in a sense. I mean, there's only life, but so the personal story in a way could be more beautiful when it does appear. So the experience of time changes so that what's actually present is much more real. And if you're with someone and they leave, they leave completely, so it's what's here is much more real. So there's an unlovedness with everything, which continues with the cup and the table, with everything that's arising. And very often, when the mind is not there, it is, I would say, some people don't talk about that so much, but it is sweeter when the mind is completely gone. There's a sweetness to that as well. So there's something about just resting in this, where it's felt most intensely as well. So all the questions fall away, and the sense of authority, the one at the front of the room, this authority falls away as well. But as this goes on, what is noticed is authority tends to demolish more and more and more. You find yourself very much alone. So there's nothing you can do to make this happen, because it's seen that there's no one who can make this happen. But lots of people have glimpses. Glimpses are common, and people get a taste of this, and they probably have in flow states of creative flow, or in different athletic activities and so on. You can get a sort of sense of this, or at moments where there's peace is felt. But in living from this, in a way, there's an increase in consciousness, obviously, so you're much more aware of what's going on inside and outside, but there's some patterns take a long time to unwind as well, so you can be in this state and not know that your best friend is toxic. It's really, really toxic, or so. So you can still, if there's sometimes a difficulty in bringing your life into alignment with this, which is something that people often want to do after maybe a couple of years of being in this state of completion. You may want to change certain things in your life, like how your kind of work, your relationship, your friendships, or whatever, and sometimes that can be difficult as well. So because in a sense it's very much like a reincarnation in a way, because it's like stepping into another life depending on how you were before this. So if you were very, very troubled, you may not, you will just, a lot of that can drop away, and you may not remember what it was like before, and it may not even be a shock, it's just suddenly you're in another life. So it's a kind of gentle shock, a very grounded shock. It's a very, suddenly you're in a different life and you're in the same circumstances, so it's quite strange in a way. So many children do remember this, and they feel like it's like a dark cloud, that constriction coming in, that sense of smallness, because it's actually very, very difficult to navigate life as a person, because there's so much at stake. It feels very much like there's so much at stake. There's failure and success, there's, you know, could have done better, there's regret, there's hope, there's always trying to do better, or but when it's seen that there's no one doing anything, it's a relief. It's suddenly those failures seem quite sweet. It's like you never could have done anything about that, and there's something nice about that, which isn't to say that sometimes you can go, damn, you know, but so in a way it's an absolute forgiveness. It's which can lead to premature forgiveness, of course, because you can forgive everybody and realise that actually, you know, it's quite good maybe not to always do that. So, but life continues, and life, it becomes very ordinary, although that word is probably used quite a lot where people think being's quite extraordinary, but it's so normal, I would say. It becomes kind of normal, life goes on, and life still has to be, you know, navigated, although no one is doing it. So, and it can be accompanied by energetic experiences as well. So there can be psychic experiences, there can be light experiences, there can be seeing of, you know, the experience of, on my own case, the experience of seeing into the hearts and minds of everyone. That's what it seems like at the time. So you can have all these experiences around it as well, which can be not disconcerting. That might be disconcerting, but they're not. They're actually not. And it can be preceded by, a lot of suffering tends to precede it. In a lot of cases, it's as if the ego cannot cope anymore, and it's like a giving up. It's a total surrender, but you're not doing that. It's you're surrendered somehow, and this is a grace. So, and then for a while it could be, you might become more introverted, you might become more extroverted. It depends how this affects you. Because in my own case, talking seemed a bit of a waste of time, because this is beyond the mind. So speech seemed not exhausting or anything like that, but the tendency is for the most rest, and the most rest is just that silence and enjoying that silence and sinking into it and seeing it. So there's something about just being with people. So relationships and relating becomes more intimate. the intimacy is there with everyone, and there's no sense of someone being a stranger in a sense, so, because that loveness is kind of like being in love without the need and the longing. It's just an enoughness with everyone and everything, so, which calms down over time, otherwise you probably get in trouble. So yeah, you can walk around quite smiley for a long time, but it becomes more normal. And it can be difficult for someone maybe who was very defended and they didn't have any boundaries, because this can just strip you of your defences, and in a way there's no preparation for that, so it's quite, you have to learn how to navigate this in a way. So you might be overly friendly and very open in cases where maybe you should be more guarded, and depending on where you're coming from. So, but suffering can still arise, but it tends not to take root unless you've got severe trauma, or for some people they still have to deal with that. If you're a fight responder, if you've got a sort of anger response to traumatic events, then you might still be, rather than just responding, you might still have that. So some people still have stuff going on. There's an increase in empathy generally and compassion, because there's more ability to be with someone, because the mind is not in the way of that. And so it tends to, whatever this is, it tends to like sitting around, it tends to like restful scenarios, it tends to deepen. There's the states that come and go within this as well, so you might get samadhi states where you feel quite drunken at times, or less so. So I find if I'm just sitting or can't do anything else, if I'm in a situation where there's nothing to be done, then this can really deepen, and I can feel much more juicy. So yeah. But there's something about talking about unconditional love. There's a feeling to that. I remember there's a woman the last time talking about near-death experience, she said about talking about it sort of brings it back. So it's a funny one, because talking about the memory of this, the initial seeing, because it's so intense, the initial seeing of unconditional love is just breathtaking. Like it's, yeah, you cannot imagine it. If you try to imagine it, you just couldn't. There's no way. And the radical acceptance is so. There's no argument with how someone is or how things are. In a way, that falls away. So there's not this trying to shift someone or change someone or shoots or odds. That's certainly, that tends to fall away. So that there's this love, and within that there can be all sorts of hate, anger, anything can arise in that, but it's all within unconditional love, so it doesn't exclude any emotional state that can arise. But generally there's more of a kind of neutrality, I guess, because the mind is not there in the same way. For me, the mind comes and goes, and it's nice when it's gone, and sometimes it's nice when it's there. So ruminative thought tends to go for the most part. Although if you have real problems actually occurring kind of here and now, suffering can arise in that. But it's a kind of waste of time looking for this. A lot of people get trapped looking for this as well. It sort of seems like, I don't know, there are better things to be doing, but nevertheless, your time. But does anybody have any questions?
You said that you feel more and more alone.
Not in a bad way, but just with, you know, that nobody has the answers in a way, like, whereas before it always seemed like there was someone to go to for answers. So all that kind of drops away, like, things become really simple, and so you begin to see through, like, this. I think as well, when you listen to some people speak, and if you don't understand it as well, it seems quite clear that maybe there's nothing to understand. It's like there's a kind of clarity is really simple, and there's nothing really to seduce you anymore. Like, whereas before I might listen to someone speaking of like what you need to do, or levels of consciousness, or this or that, or somebody knows about Kundalini, who's an expert. It's like all that collapses. It just collapses. You can't really universalize anything in a way. Like, okay, the non-dual scene, we know what that is. It's kind of, because it's beyond the mind, but there's nothing to say about that really, you know. But it's just that the concern with non-duality falls away as well, and it's like none of this really matters in a way, somehow. So it's not an absolute freedom, because in a way we all affect each other. We just do all the time, like what we say, what we allow someone to be. We close people down, we open them up, we affect people. Some people undermine each other, or they help each other grow, you know, like all that goes on. So we're never autonomous in a sense. We're always this whole gestalt. We're always affected by what's around us, whether we're awake or not. But there's just more awareness of that and what's going on. And it's not like, if you're healthy enough, games will fall away as well, because a lot of relationships and stuff, there's a lot of you know, games and stuff that go, but they can continue. It's not like, so you can have, obviously in a cult situation, there's, you know, there can be a seduction, and there can be, you know, when you first awaken, you can be quite vulnerable to what other people say, in a sense, because you can look for validation, and if you go for validation for the wrong person, they might undermine you and shame you into silence. That could happen. Or else it may be that you have, you know, some sort of intellectual understanding of this as well. So, in which case, you know, it hasn't been seen. But at the end of the day, you really need to stand alone with this. You really need to go. It's that, you know, seeing the Buddha in the road, killing him. You just got to get rid of all of that, and that tends to go. When you start to integrate this, when you start to talk about it, you know, it's like doubts arise, they have no power. What anybody says, it's in that sense, it's great. It can be very empowering in a sense, but it's also, you can be quite alone in that because most people are pointing at authorities all the time. Jung says this, or whoever says this, or Ramana Maharshi says that, and it's all, it's just words. It's just, But sometimes, over time, your perception of this changes, not of the non-dual seeing, but how you speak about it can change as well, depending on why you're talking, I suppose. If you're talking primarily just as a business, this is business, but if you're really wanting to find out what you think, you speaking about it's a great way to do that because it evolves a lot as well. Because there's so much conditioning around awakening, it's got such a baggage around it as well. So you can start to free yourself a little bit from that, if you're lucky, or not so lucky.
You talk about unconditional love. I read that a lot, but how can you define it or feel it, or it seems so big? So
We can't really define it.
yes.
It's almost, it's not getting overwhelmed, but it's the essence of everything, and it's seen. It can be seen as well, but there's a feelingness to it, as in the lack of separation is kind of, there's a feeling tone to that as well, because it is just, it's like falling in love. It is that sort of, because all the barriers are gone, the boundary between in and out have gone, so it's everything is as it should be, and it couldn't be otherwise. It's a real kind of coming home. It's like, so, whereas before everything, there was always that seeking for a home, or seeking for that sense of safety, but it's just there, and but it's very, very full. I think it calms down with time, but it's, so, because if you're really a shy person, which I am, meeting others could be really, really threatening. There's that division, isn't there? And when that's kind of gone, they're still okay. I don't know you, I don't know what your thoughts and your feelings are, but it's just that, when you're with someone and there's no division, when someone when you fall in love or whatever, there's no, just those moments where you're just totally connected. It's like that. It's a total connection to what it is, and it doesn't, I'm not talking just about people, it's whatever you're with, whether it's the tree, just I love this, it's the tree, which is pretty good. It's like merging with kind of everything, so, but also that all that was despised and hated is actually okay. Everything's okay, and loved, and so it's a real coming home. And the ordinariness of that is just really hard to describe, because it shouldn't feel, if you had any idea what this was like, you'd think, oh my God, it must be like a real shock, but it's not. That's the surprise of it as well. It's so natural, it's so, it's just, it feels how it should be somehow, I don't know. It's,
So when and sort of how did your awakening or realization come about? How would you describe it?
Well, the seeing of emptiness, which was something I only kind of recollected later, was just very simple because I was just walking around the cemetery in a really pissed off mood, and I just saw that my thoughts were arising spontaneously, and I thought, oh, that's how it happens. That's normal. Everybody must experience that. And I remember just realizing that that's how it is. That's not who I am, and I knew that. And then there's the realization there's no one here, which I couldn't understand because I had no understanding from non-duality or anything. So it was just, so I thought something bad had happened, because how could there be no one here, and how could I not have the sense of a body here at all? Or so it was quite disconcerting in a way, and I didn't tell anybody about it because I thought they'd think I was really messed up. But unconditional love, the moment really was, it seemed to, I need to go into the whole thing, but I won't. I'll go to the kind of sort of biggest moment. If that was in a restaurant where just seeing of everything and nothing, so just seems so clear. There's just nothing and everything, and the love appearing. And I was sat in the restaurant, and there was a tree outside the window, and I was drinking a glass of champagne at the time, and I was about to eat, and I couldn't, and I didn't know how to chew because I'd never chewed before, and so I didn't know how to do anything. I didn't know what anything kind of was, and then the love was so. I was just seeing everything the first time, so I was just like, "This is the Garden of Eden." And that's the thought that came to me. It wasn't even a thought; it was more like, just a knowing that this is. And I couldn't understand language. My boyfriend was talking to me, and I couldn't really understand it, but it amused me. It seemed really funny. It seemed like, because everything seemed very important that he was talking about to him. It seemed so. It was like that was the kind of moment. I did manage to chew, but it didn't seem to be some of the chewing kind of managed to happen, but. And yeah, so but yeah, I found it very difficult to walk as well, because the bliss seemed very thick, almost like I felt like I was wading through it, like, so I was just walking around, just staring, and because that absorption is so, it's not even drunkenness, is the only kind of word I can use, but it's so juicy, and it's not the same world, so it's like, what am I looking at? What? So just this wonder and. How do you experience that? Or?
Yeah, so I can relate to a lot of what you're talking about.
Okay.
And that sort of knowing rather than being able to describe it and use words and language.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely thought that when you, although obviously you're speaking and it's a relation and an understanding, the more words we use brings more separation, in a sense, which takes you away from that knowing of non-duality and being at one with everything, like you say, the tree or the person.
Yeah, maybe, but I suppose I thought about what you said as well. I thought about that and sort of like it's maybe for me I would put it like, not that it takes you out of it like a little bit or anything, it's more like it's just sweeter when it's not there maybe. Somehow you sink deeper when you're not talking. It's like that, so it's more, it's very subtle, isn't it? Because I say like outdoors is nice when you're with nature or whatever, but also you could be sitting at your desk staring at the wall and it's still sweet. And I remember looking at a glass on the table and the wonder of that, like, you know, like, because everything's just kind of radiant and, but yeah, I know what you mean, but yeah, it's without speech, because it's like, what's there to talk about actually, and then obviously conversation comes back, and conversation is great. I love conversation, you know, but yeah, for a long time it's like, actually, yeah, I had a short time where I was just sort of hanging out with somebody and not speaking is really, really lovely, you know. So, when did that happen for you then?
I'd say over the past year to 18 months.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm definitely myself in a place of, when I'm in that place of awareness or consciousness, it feels so much sweeter, like you say. And then, but we are human beings, we are living in an objective world, so when you go back into that place, it's sort of, for me, I'm losing that sort of interest in that sort of conversation and that day to day.
Okay.
I feel that when I'm in that place of awareness and consciousness, yeah, it's just so much sweeter and more blissful and peaceful.
Do you feel like it comes and goes then with you? Is it like
yeah,
that?
I feel like it's a day-to-day sort of practice. Sort of, but when I inquire back into that place of awareness, I can go back there. So,
Okay. So you get a sense of constriction comes back then? Okay. Is it the same then, like a sense of someone here, or?
In what way do you mean?
Well, just, you know, like the sense of a person in a body, does that kind of return when it's not? Okay,
definitely.
all right. So
if you're at work or
okay.
you're with friends or family.
Oh, right, okay.
But then
Maybe it'll settle. Is it dawn? Is it? Yeah, because when it settles down, it just doesn't. The constriction just doesn't come back. You know, it's even if there's suffering there, it's not. The person doesn't. There's no. I mean, that's my experience of it. It's just like suffering in this, but yeah, it's just there all the time, and nothing seems to ultimately matter in that. Life or death doesn't seem to matter particularly at times. Like, sometimes it feels like death would be sweeter. Not that I'm about to like jump off a cliff, but yeah, it's like it doesn't. Sometimes it feels very like that, but yeah. I think before I just sort of thought, it seemed to me life was kind of unlivable. It's so hard. Like I don't know. It depends, I guess, on how everybody is, but it's just so tough, isn't it? Because it's like just this allotment of years and death at the end. It's like, what? You know, and then suddenly it's like sweet in spite of that. It doesn't make any sense. None of this stuff makes any sense, but it's sweet somehow, and it's worthwhile as the wrong word, because it's not even, you know, it's seems more like a curse than a gift. I don't know, it's sort of like a gift, I suppose. And there's kind of gratitude for that somehow. Mm. And sometimes people talk about awareness during sleep, sometimes that happens as well, which I find interesting as well, like, because I never used to sort of, I never used to be into dream interpretation or anything. I just think it was all bollocks, but now I sort of, sometimes I've had where I've just seen my thoughts turn into dream characters in different parts of, you know, landscape and stuff as well, sort of, you know, like how your dreams are afterwards. Some of them are the same, and then, but yeah, just like I can see why people interpret, you know, landscapes, and but also, yeah, some dreams where just nothing's happening. Where it's just, I don't know, just the sky, or just shooting stars, or, I mean, most of them are normal, like, but sometimes I get just, never had that before, but it's conversations I've had with sort of Richard about what happens before and after, with that. A lot of people find they're much more quotidian, humdrum kind of as well, so it's quite interesting.
Your dreams change a lot before and after?
Not really. I mean, just some that I never used to have before, like ones where nothing happened, you know, not massively. I can't really remember what they were like before, to be honest, but when I have lucid dreams, I never used to have, like, angels and demons in them. What I do. So, yeah, and they're kind of like supernatural beings. Like, yeah, so apart from that, like, nah, yeah, like say ones where nothing happens.
It's funny because I think I've heard Tony Parsons say his dreams got more boring afterwards.
Richard says that as well.
Yeah.
I don't know that mine have become more boring. I don't know, like, I haven't remembered any for a while, so some more interesting as well. But yeah, nah. Maybe, I don't know, I can't remember. What about you? Have your dreams changed?
I think I've always had quite a vivid imagination when it comes to dreams.
Right, okay.
They can be crazy, they can be boring. It's always been like that. Apart from when I was addicted to smoking weed every night, then I couldn't remember any dreams.
Oh, okay.
But then when I stopped again, it was like I made up for some lost time with some crazy dreams, and then they fluctuate. Sometimes they're like galactic space battles, and sometimes it's just talking to someone.
Oh, really? Galactic space. Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, it's a bit weird.
All right, okay, so you're experiencing different dimensions in yours, are you then? Because I've heard that as well.
Yeah, sometimes, and sometimes message dreams.
Like,
I call them message dreams.
like what sort of message?
Sometimes it would be just like some words,
Uh-huh.
and they'll just still be ringing in my head when I wake up, and it'd be weird things like had one that just said May 15th. I still don't know what that means because
May what?
May 15th.
May 15th? Alright, okay, alright.
May 15th hasn't rolled round yet, so
Alright, okay.
May 15th. Or sometimes it will be like something specific, like once I had one that was like just it had nothing to do with the dream. The dream was boring, but then I woke up and there was just a message about tuning forks.
Right.
And then I ended up looking up tuning forks, and now I'm studying sound therapy and using
Oh,
tuning
how
forks.
weird.
So
Okay, right.
sometimes they're like messages.
Okay, useful. Right.
But I mean, I guess people have that anyway. It might not be anything to do with.
Well, it's interesting you're having it now, isn't it, as well, though? So
Seems to be, yeah.
accessing something. I get a lot more flying dreams. My kind of boring dreams, I tend to be flying in them and thinking it's weird that nobody notices that. And sometimes they're like musicals as well. They're like, there's music. And sometimes I've been singing along and the people in the dream start singing the musical. We're all singing the musical. That's kind of, and I wake up and the music is still in my head. I've had that like a few times. It's really kind of camp and it's quite good fun. But, like total nonsense. Like I've had that. And
No message in that one then.
absolutely none. It just, dude, like, but there's the colours. Sometimes I don't know if you get that, but the colours can be different. I know when it's been like a sort of energetic Kundalini type dream, because the colours are like, they're almost like dessert. They're like ice cream or something, you know. And like just to look at them, it's like yum. Like it's just wow, you know. It's just different. It's really absorbing. I don't really get the intergalactic stuff though. I know someone else who gets those kind of.
It's very specific, like star systems, like be like Sirius B. Okay. Don't know much about Sirius B. Just Sirius B.
I want to be in a dream. It's amazing.
But I've got quite an active imagination in my waking life, so maybe it's just that.
Okay. Yeah, it could be. It could be that. I don't know. But interesting what transpires afterwards. But yeah, things can shift as well. Like I said before, like Kundalini stuff started 3 years ago. A different kind of where I started getting visions where I'd never had that before. So, which is very beautiful as well, very absorbing. And it's kind of fun.
And that's with your eyes open.
Eyes open, yeah. So it's just like being somewhere else. But often it's just like a scene, but a minute, you know, where there's no one in it, or just like it can just be different kind of skyscapes and you know. But yeah, it's, or sometimes there's stuff happening, but yeah, it's really nice. Yeah. But yeah, it's funny. It's strange how it's just known afterwards that there's nothing and everything, and it's yeah, it's just known that, as well as experiences, so many different ways of kind of getting this in a way. Which you'd think would make the life of the character so unimportant, and yet it doesn't. So it's the fact it's still personal experience for no one is kind of weird as well. But yeah, the story's good, I think. I think a lot of things that you haven't faced could just come up to be met in that as well, like all the kind of spiritual bypass stuff as well. So when you try to live this, it really can be tricky as well. You might find you don't know what you want and all those problems, but it's funny reading about this before you experience it and you sort of try to get a grasp of it, and there's no way of knowing what beyond the mind means. You can be quite, I could get quite arrogant about it, oh right, okay, that's that, or and then, it's like, well, that falls away, doesn't it? It's like, it's just what is, and can't really, it's very, very hard to conceive that it's actually meant literally. I think it's so difficult. You're nodding a lot, so that's your experience.
Yeah, it's, I've always been very intellectual. I've always sort of operated very much up there, and so
Right.
when you hear people describe these experiences, you listen to their words and you try and form a mental picture of what they're describing. I think if I just listen to enough people talking about it, and if I read enough books, and if I stuff my mind full of enough concepts, I'm going to be able to get a grasp of what it's like. And then when you have a taste of the actual experience, it's like just nothing like what you thought it was.
So you've had an awakening experience, or is it all over for you then, or?
I feel I'm sort of still quite near the beginning of my journey.
Okay.
I went through some kind of shift or like step of awakening in like November, December last year.
Right.
Where, and I wasn't kind of seeking it or trying to bring it about. It just kind of happened for like no reason.
Yeah.
My mind just went absolutely silent, just by itself.
Yeah.
And the silence was so profound, and suddenly I became aware of this, I don't know what words to use, like a divine energy or divine presence in the air, almost like it's kind of electric, like this energy field.
Yeah.
This divine energy is just like all around me, but you would never notice it when your mind is always active and identifying as the ego, and I am this identity in this body. And it kind of felt like in that moment of silence I just became so intensely aware of this, I don't know how to describe it, this divine energy that was always here and I'd never known it.
Okay, yeah.
And it was very disorientating. Like it was, it's going to sound ridiculous, and I can't even explain why I did it, but I was in my flat and I kind of felt the need to kind of ground myself by touching the furniture, because I felt so kind of spaced out.
Okay.
And just to actually touch the furniture and feel the texture of the fabric of the chair and everything was so intense. It was like, I just need to hold on to stuff because I feel this intense awareness of something, and I feel like I don't know what's going to happen. I need to kind of ground myself or something.
Was it a fearful feeling that or not? No,
No.
it wasn't. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. So it's just a kind of instinctual thing. Yeah.
Instinctual is like I feel I'm going to float away or something. But it was such a pleasurable experience. I mean, everyone watching me, I just thought I'd gone mad because I was walking around the flat caressing my furniture. This guy been smoking something. Like, no.
Was it very tactile for you then? You
Yes.
say caressing? Oh, right, okay.
Intensely tactile, and it was. I haven't had that level of intensity since then. But
Okay.
it's kind of calmed down.
Right, okay.
But it's still there, and it kind of still surfaces. But I'm just thinking back to trying to communicate that to someone in an intellectual way. There's just no words, no concepts, nothing intellectual, nothing analytical. Like you couldn't read 100 books about the subject, but yeah, now I know what that's like.
Yeah.
I've never really felt that sort of non-dual state where my identity is just gone and there's no really and nothing. It's still
Right.
very much grounded in there's still a me here
Okay.
experiencing it. So I feel, I'm sure there's I feel I'm just at the beginning of this journey.
Yeah, I don't think the me can survive the no mind for long as well. Like it doesn't seem like how could it sustain itself in that as well. Like it's so powerful that, isn't it, when it just drops away. Particularly when it's got a feeling to it. So did it with you as well. It's like it's not just the mind stopping, is it? It's
No.
just it's so much more than that, and that's the hard bit to put into words, I think, as well. It's
Yes.
but yeah, that's how it sparked off with me, is like that stops, and then I think that's as well, like if you get energetic experience as well, when it stops and suddenly, I just know I'm in for a treat. When I go to bed or something, like it's just, like there's a certain intensity of it, where it's like, tonight's gonna be colourful or something. But, yeah, but most of the time it's quite gentle, but like in those instances when it just kicks off, it's massive, isn't it? And the energy, because I remember as well during the week, like there's certain ways of sitting and moving, and you could feel the energy move so much in the body. Whatever, it's like almost increasing the stillness.
Really interesting what you were saying about the unconditional love as well, and like what you were asking about how it's so hard to put into words, but like you were saying, to walking out and smiling at everyone, and perhaps that's a bit too sort of friendly with people, maybe you can have to tone it down a little bit.
Yeah, but they respond too, don't they? Like that's kind of, well. And it's funny, like the default shifted. I remember when I'd meet someone who's like, maybe somebody would normally just avoid their gaze because they'd be, nasty or whatever. And they look at you and with that look of venom, and they see your face, and it diffuses it. Like I've seen that where it just, there's no, because normally you don't make eye contact with someone who's dodgy, do you? Like, but suddenly it's like, it's almost like they see there's nothing there. There's no one to hate or something. I mean, I wouldn't try that out as an experiment, like, but it seemed, yeah. It's like the body responds as if, everything's safe and everyone is safe and everyone is good, and just seeing that, I guess, because you're just relating from that, it's just oneness, isn't it? And it's benign, isn't it?
I've had an experience of that recently where I was on the train and there was this guy who was clearly very angry and pissed off about something, and he was just as he was trying to get off the train, he is just kind of swearing people, get out of my way, and just looking at him and having that feeling of unconditional love, it was just so clear to me that like the solution is just love. Like this guy, for whatever reason, you know, it's just the solution is so simple. Like love, it's just like love is the answer to everything. And although I didn't meet his gaze, I just felt if I could have gone up to him and just kind of like, when your heart opens with compassion, it's like this guy, you know, just if you get a taste of that love in his heart, which seems to be absent, or if he feels that it's absent, but it's just so kind of so clear in that moment to me that like this guy, I'm trying to give him a hug. He's just like you can sense his anger. You can feel like he's closed off, or like he sort of walls up or something, or the world is against him, and yeah, you just think, oh, I feel
like, it could go the other way too. Like, I was just sort of, you're saying that, I was thinking of George Harrison when he got attacked by some paranoid schizophrenic, tracked him down, got into the house, whatever, and George Harrison started singing Hare Krishna. It didn't stop the fucker. Like, I think he got stabbed by it. But yeah, I mean, I suppose, yeah, when you're very dependent, I suppose like it can go the other way too, can't it? Like, but with some people it seemed to diffuse, but I can imagine it going the other way too. Like, because if you did actually hug someone, might be your last. But, yeah. But I know what you mean. It's like you see through that defenses, and you know it's not who they are. Like,
yes.
Yeah, and
yes.
it's kind of, yeah.
Like it's like a sort of to me it really feels like a new way of relating to the world and to everyone. It's like, how do I operate in the world with this new way of perceiving? And yeah, it's like sort of finding that balance that you shouldn't necessarily just follow your instinct and just go around hugging everyone.
Yeah.
Unconditional love. It's like, okay, this is a new. I need to find a new balance here, like a new way of relating. But I can kind of connect and express with people, but you're also still kind of grounded in the sort of mundane reality.
And learning to discriminate, like, yeah, because it's so easy to let that one drop as well, isn't it? And you know, I learned that one the hard way, I think, the old. Yeah, it's just, yeah. It's alright to tell people to fuck off, isn't it, sometimes? And, I think it can feel like you're turned inside out as well a bit, like what people are, you're like seeing like what's going on for someone, like it's so powerful like that. Obviously you can't make the mistake of assuming you know what's going on, but just that almost you could just see, I mean, my experience with like the ego playing out what exactly was going on with something, like it's so powerful, it's like, oh, too much information, like sometimes as well, like just so much information, just because the veil seems so stripped away, it's like, but interesting.
I've heard some people say that they can see so clearly this sort of mask of the ego, the performance, the outward sort of public persona that people put on, and I've heard people say they can see through that so clearly, and they can see like the true self, the true identity behind, and they can see the mask in front. When they're talking to someone, they can see both.
Yeah. And the tortured individual caught in the mind, that can be really, really disturbing when that is seen. Like, it's like really odd. But in a way, it's good that things can die. And you know, we can see if somebody's like schizophrenic. They often say it's like I don't know, an unintegrated kind of kundalini or whatever. You know, just too much information, isn't it? Some sort of energetic states and stuff. But yeah, it's like, mind you, when it's grounded in the kind of love, it's kind of easy, but it's still, I don't know, there's something better about it, maybe a little more subtle, I don't know, like, but it's still, I think, well, they say the more mindful you are, the more easy it is for you to read people's expressions, because you know there's so much, we project so much, and that goes on, you know, projecting onto other people. Are they, you know, angry or this or that? But yeah, you tend to be more accurate. That's why I suppose after awakening it must be more accurate, it seems. You know. And,
Inga, I want to ask, since you've sort of been in this place, or obviously the awakening state, maybe you can answer as well yourself, have you noticed a difference in like the reflection of the world around you, and like being able to, or seeing like your own creations, or in a sense, or a difference in how you see things and perception, how things manifest in a way maybe?
like what? In your case, you obviously have like.
No, I wouldn't say a few things, yeah, maybe. I'm starting to realise,
Like,
but I feel like I see it later, I recognise later that maybe I have maybe manifested or something created it subconsciously or whatever.
oh, what things like you kind of want something and it appears, or?
Yeah, or preference. I wouldn't necessarily say a desire, but just whether it be in relationships or in a career, your day-to-day job, or people you meet in this anyway.
Oh, like the synchronicity stuff as
Yeah.
well. That, yeah, so at times that's kind of noticed here, like, but not like, yeah, just at times I notice that. Sometimes not, and you'll get occasions where things seem to line up. I guess that can happen any time. Like I notice it more. I have noticed it before awakening as well. I mean, yeah, anybody can get sort of synchronicity stuff. I don't know, but yeah, yeah, there is stuff like that goes on for sure. But I think Rakesh, you talked about that, didn't you? Synchronicity or not?
Yeah, still. I mean, I have synchronicities a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I'm still sliding into it, so it's maybe that's why, and maybe if it settles one day, there is a sense of me, then maybe they settle down too. I don't know.
I don't know that there's any sort of, I wonder, pattern to that, like you're shaking your your head, Lindy?
No, when you said there's no pattern to it, because I have masses of synchronicity, I mean completely bizarre things in patches.
Yeah, patches resonates with me.
And I can't actually think of any now, it's really funny, but very rarely a week goes by where something really quite... But, you know, I
Right.
know there's probably no meaning to it, but of course, you know, the backstory and the habit is, oh, I wonder what that meant, isn't that amazing? You know, just let it go. You know, yeah, it's interesting, but doesn't mean anything.
But I feel like that's a kind of... There's almost like a pressure in non-dual circles to say it doesn't mean anything. You know, like it's... But it's interesting the way things line up. I mean, I think I used to dismiss a lot of that stuff, where it's sometimes things line up in a way that's really, really helpful, or just you know, I'm not so dismissive of it, like not necessarily that it, you know, like, but it is odd, just like the craze and stuff like that are odd, like when your body starts moving by itself, you know, which is different from seeing that there is no doer, like that. It's just really weird, that stuff as well, isn't it? So there is this kind of, I mean, just the stuff that is brushed aside, there is something you can tune into that is just really, what the hell is that? Like, and synchronicity, it does seem like situations are orchestrated sometimes at the right time, because they have a different, I don't know, can be just really humorous as well sometimes. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't dismiss them and say it's a load of rubbish. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
interested, but I've got quite a, like you say about imagination, you know, I've got quite a vivid imagination, you know, you can imagine all sorts of things and then think, oh, you know, this is, I don't know, this means this, or this is getting, oh, it must be getting stronger.
Oh, yes, that
all
one,
that
alright,
kind of
okay.
stuff. So, you know, it's just what's interesting, and let's see.
Yeah, sure, okay. Yeah, that it's leading somewhere, that's what you mean, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it never does it? I mean, well, I don't know. Like,
Well,
I mean,
I don't know, but I've certainly heard a lot that it's probably not worth getting too hung up on these things that happen.
Are you sort of describing not trying to get attached to what you're kind of aware of?
Because I think inevitably that's probably going to, you know, certainly in the short term, lead to sort of disappointment in a way. So I try not to grab on to, oh, that might mean, you know, just you know.
I like the way I like to think about it's kind of similar to, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but what you were maybe trying to say is, at some level there's this understanding is integrating in a way, so it's kind of like the understanding that there's no separation is reflecting in things like synchronicities. It's like a kind of just an acknowledgement of what you already know, just like little winks, and then that may get confused as like what you were saying, like oh, I'm getting closer, but it's actually it's always been winking at you. You're just noticing it more. Yeah. Well, I don't know, that's how it feels for me.
No, I think I've always had quite amazing synchronicities, and I've just been aware of, you know, lots of strange things. But it certainly seems since I've been, well, since I learned about non-duality, really, there seems to have been an awful lot more since I've been on this non-path.
Anything you want to share? No.
Well, I can't actually think. Just meeting people who just know somebody in a completely different country, and you know, it's just incredible. You know, the way just.
Oh yeah, I get that.
I don't know, and seeing words and things, and it's not just that I'm noticing it, because I understand the psychology. You buy a red car and they're everywhere. You know, you see loads of red cars. It feels like it's more than that. You know, an unusual what you suddenly hear about something you never heard about before, and a week later you hear about it again from somebody else, completely different. And then a week later somebody else mentions it, and then it's on telly. blimey, that's a bit more than just, I've got a red car and, oh, look at all these red cars. It feels like it, but like I said, I try not to read too much into it because I don't know, you know, who knows, basically. I mean, we don't know anything, so I think just be open to everything, really. That's what I try to do, just, well.
I think I find it a lot when I end up in a situation where I just bump into somebody or meet somebody. It's almost like I bet they're in the same place, or like I can almost predict what they're going to say and how it's going to go. Like it's just uncanny. And I've had that with one-to-ones. It's like, I know what your life is like, and then it's just transpired that it is exactly, you know, you meeting people and then it's bizarre, like it, you know, sometimes feels like that.
How much has that got though, I don't know who said it, how much has that got to do with awakening? Is it because you're possibly with awakening you're just more open, the change of perspective, the change of energy, other things, because a lot of people say nothing has changed like that for them at all.
Yeah,
you know, everything's just as normal in a non-normal kind of way. But.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's why they're close to it, because like I was so dismissive of the energetic stuff until 3 years ago, where it just like boom, you know, and it's like, oh, how can I be you know, it's quite significant in my life. And yeah, so when you're, I guess if it's very normal after, then you just be like, well, who cares? It like people as well who haven't experienced no mind often don't believe in no mind, like, well, nobody gets that, you know. Actually, I suppose maybe it's hard to imagine what that's like, but it's actually very ordinary too.
I haven't experienced no mind, but certainly mind being out here.
Right.
And something else watching it. I mean, you know, sort of no, well, I mean, I don't mean physically out there, but the sort of a feeling that it's not in, that it wasn't in here anymore.
Right.
And it was just chuntering along the way here. This was all very silent and just going where it was led.
Yeah, yeah.
And the mind was out here and actually had nothing to do with it. So, you know, I might be thinking, oh, I wonder if I'm going to, and then I'd be up and I'd done it before I'd even had the thought.
Oh, right, yeah, sure.
Really bizarre. I mean, it was wonderful because, oh yeah, you know, I sort of get a little taste now.
Yeah.
So. But it was quite a relief just to be able to just watch the mind without it affecting whoever I thought I might be in those moments. It was definitely not in my head. It was such, oh, it was wonderful.
Yeah. It doesn't have the same power either. I mean, when it is there, like, but it's still sweeter when it's not.
Well, I think it would be easier for it to just go and let it go in a way if it's not so intimate and so here, if it's just chuntering away over here, I can imagine it just just ignoring it, if you like, I suppose.
Yeah.
I don't mean ignoring it, pushing it away, but just that you can actually be quiet and just hear going on, like doing, you know, I don't know, like sitting quietly, but you hear something going on in the background.
Yeah, because I think that is what happens when it's seen anyway, because it's just, because it's not you, and it did seem very central, and it did seem very locatable as well. So I suppose that goes with the whole sense of location, body location, and
yeah, I didn't have a non-location feeling, and wasn't really aware that I'd lost the me. I mean, it was definitely an awakening experience, you know. But it felt like a taster of something and feelings that I will not feel. A place I'd never been before, and for me that pointed to very much what you're pointing to.
Yeah, sure.
And some of it I can put into words because thought of it was very here and now. Oh, that's amazing. I wrote it all down, you know. I mean, I was with it enough to and that happened, and this happened, and that happened. I mean, I was just completely bowled over and amazed by the whole thing. It was just stunning. In a very normal kind of way.
Yeah, that's the bit that's hard to get across, isn't it? It's just, is all that. No.
I was thinking when I was listening to you earlier, that one of the things for me, and I don't know whether don't think I've ever mentioned this to anybody, but one of the things that would happen during that, it was only a 24-hour kind of, just felt like I left the planet Lindy for, 24 hours. And it was, but I had to keep my eyes open. I didn't want to close my eyes. Normally, and I was sitting here thinking about that because I just really felt like just closing my eyes and being peaceful listening to you. And I suddenly thought, oh yeah, when this was happening to me, I really wanted to just keep my eyes open.
Why? Do you know? Energetically? Was it just a desire? Yeah, like...
No reason, I just really, it felt more restful just to keep my eyes open.
I get that.
Do you?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Yeah, because you sort of think if you're a meditator and if you haven't experienced this, it's like, oh, well, you close, get rid of but actually the rest is actually in all of this, it's juicier with the eyes open. It's bizarrely, counterintuitive, I suppose.
I mean, nothing of interest that I could say, oh, I'm looking at anything. It
just doesn't need to be.
Where I normally feel much more rested if I just close my eyes. This time, it was completely the opposite.
There's more absorption, I think.
Compulsion, just and I can feel that a bit now.
Yeah, there's something in the gaze, because also the gaze as well shuts off the thinking mind too, but also I think if you're awake, if you've experienced this, you drop so much more in that. So it's just, I can see why it's used as an opener in the Sufi tradition. And
Wow,
I think,
I don't know about that.
it's and also the gaze is kind of, or like you, sort of the aperture of your focus tends to be widened as well very often, and you just, I guess, because just so much more awareness as well. It's just, but yeah, I find that open eyes. It's like, well, it's all the gaze. In a sense, it's all after awakening. To me, it seemed like, even if it's unfocused, like you say, looking, it's absorption somehow with the eyes open, more so somehow.
Would you describe that as sort of like a seeing rather than a looking type?
Well, I suppose so when if it's unfocused, or I don't know what you mean, like, because seeing, because there's nobody looking. I suppose that implies more like agenda kind of stuff, or because it's merging. I think looking is merging somehow. I don't know. Why do you ask?
No, I'm just listening,
All right.
trying to sort of, not done.
It definitely wasn't, I know the unfocused thing you're talking about, but that's not what I'm talking about kind of now.
Right.
It was definitely, it wasn't unfocused, but it definitely also wasn't looking. It was just easier to have the eyes open, seeing just the walls and whatever was happening.
The eyes very wide
Yeah.
as well. Yeah.
It felt like the eyes were
Yeah.
very wide. I don't think I probably looked any different, but I feel they're quite wide now, interesting.
Yeah, they
Now
are.
Are they?
No, I reckon. But you can see it. Have you ever seen, like, sometimes you go, I've noticed that in the tube, somebody's eyes are really wide and you kind of know. When it looks really, there's a kind of sanity there, and you could kind of guess that they're probably in an altered state, and it's that,
It happens to people on certain drugs like MDMA and stuff, but that also replicates kind kind of love feeling, doesn't it?
I don't know, I've never, yeah, I haven't tasted.
They use it in therapy and stuff.
There's probably a correlation, isn't there, of what happens on, you know, on a physical level, on the brain level, I would have thought, or something, you know.
I think I know what you mean. Though. It's almost like it's more effort to close your eyes.
Yeah, whereas normally it's more of an effort to keep your eyes
Yeah.
open. This was, it was definitely far more, it was more of an effort to close my eyes.
Yeah, that makes sense, it does.
Oh, I'm glad to, it's nice, isn't it? It's sort of quite nice when somebody else sort of recognises that, because I hadn't really ever heard that mentioned.
Well, so when you get into the more subtle stuff, there are situations that alter this, I think, in how it's experienced, and just subtly, for sure. Yeah.
Like the aperture thing, just the way you said that, I definitely felt that. Like the last one I can remember was like standing at a train platform and normally looking at things like signs or vending machine track, but then there was a moment where suddenly it was like much wider. It was one, it was like a painting.
Panoramic view.
Yeah, it's like everything's almost flattened, and it was much more beautiful. It wasn't just a train platform anymore.
Yeah.
It was like a piece of
I
art.
wasn't particularly beautiful, but it was just something contenting and satisfying about keeping eyes open. I didn't want to close them, although there wasn't anything going on. And I think I was a bit blissy. But
Yeah, it can be a bit annoying if you're in a meditation group and you just want to keep your, yeah, like, it's funny.
Going back to what you're saying about being on the train platform, but isn't that actual non-duality, being in that place? Because like you say, if you're aware of the track or the vending machine, that's mind, you're labelling. Whereas when you're aware of being aware, then you're going back to that place of the true nature of your awareness, and that's why it feels like natural and peaceful and bliss in a sense.
Kind of, yeah, it kind of felt like the recent one felt like the aperture was including me. I am
you could
part
go one
of
with everything,
the
and it links
painting.
back to what the lady was saying about asking about unconditional love. That's when you're in that place, because you're not labelling anything, you're not judging anything, you're one with everything. So that is unconditional love, rather than what a lot of people think love is. What really they're thinking about control and controlling things for their preference, for their happiness. You know?
I guess in a way, yeah, in regards to the visual sense gate. It was just there was very much just focus on the visual aspect of it, nothing else. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
I wasn't thinking about sounds or feelings in my body or anything. It was
totally external in a way.
yeah, but I was also
Yeah, you're external.
external.
Kind of,
yeah.
no internal, but you know, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
I call them micro glimpses.
Glimpses.
I don't know what else to call them.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's a very good description. Just occasionally, you always get something before you, it's gone before you even.
Yeah.
Just
It's funny that I just sort of the surface of things. I think of Nietzsche saying, you know, about being superficial out of profundity, and it's like I don't know what he meant by that, but it is like just the appearance itself is is enough, you know. The depth disappears in that. It's just the surface of things that's doesn't need any meaning. Like it's a weird reversal in a way. Mm.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think it's quite what you're saying now, just going back to that lovely 24 hours. It was like, and I really like shifting perspective, you used those words at the beginning, and that was very much how that felt. Now, I've heard other people say it's nothing to do with shifting, it's nothing to do with perspective, whatever, but that was certainly how that felt for me. It was like what's normally the background
Yes.
was here, and it was like the mind and the head stuff, that was what was sort of out here. It was a...
Yeah, I've heard it put like that.
Yeah.
It's-
Such a
Yeah.
very tiny in some ways, infinitesimal, but also phenomenal at the same time.
Yeah. You know, it's, I mean, nothing needs to happen, and yet, without, I don't know, there is this shift as well, like, because it's not, life is transformed, there is a transformation, you know, and yet, it's very ordinary as well. I suppose because it becomes more ordinary, it's kind of like, well, what's anybody striving for? It's just, this is it. So that's true also, but I think certainly during that honeymoon period, it's so full, and you know, so it's like, you know, you would pay any money for it, you know, you would, and then it's just life, isn't it? It's just, life goes on, and, you know, what am I going to do when I, you know, and interest in things can return, like, 'cause I didn't think I'd be, for a while I lost interest in psychology, and everything I was interested in just went, you know, and I wasn't reading. I thought I'd never read again, you know, like, you know, but I do. It's good.
Are you interested in the same kind of, say, movies or TV programs or books? I mean, the subject matter, I'm not saying it's the same, you know, same kind of subject matter, or has that changed a bit?
God, movies is something that's gone. I mean, never really watched TV. I've never had a TV, and I've got a kind of aversion to it. I think I've got an issue. It's like, because I do actually quite like documentaries, but it's like, if I was left alone with a TV, I wouldn't never switch it on. That's just, you know, so I haven't seen TV.
You haven't missed much.
Yeah, but some of it's quite useful. I do watch a bit of YouTube stuff, but I notice movies, like stuff that I still watch. I have watched about one this year, last year, like maybe. I don't know. But I wonder if that's just something that goes as, anyway, I don't know. Into the same stuff, really. Psychology and philosophy, that kind of, some. What about you? Have you noticed any shift from in your own?
General loss of interest, really, in a lot of things.
Right.
But I think some of that felt like it was a bit self-driven, sort of the motivation still, because I was still on quite a spiritually path, you see what I mean?
Yeah,
it's only
sure.
recently that I've been trying to let the spiritual kind of things that I'd learnt and all that sort of, let them kind of go. So, but funny enough, since I've been doing that, I'm now a bit more interested again. I've just started reading again, and just watching a couple of movies. I've watched a couple of things on telly, but I don't know, one thing every 2 or 3 weeks. You know, I've got something that sits in the corner. I was surprised it worked actually when I switched it on. Because I hadn't actually put it on for about a year.
Wow, okay.
But yeah, I mean, but I think part of it was trying to let go of stuff. And of course, you know, the more I hear this message, the more I realise there's absolutely no point to it. If you're interested in something, just do it.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no point in trying to be anything. The relief in that is just tremendous for me. Tremendous.
Yeah, still conditioning comes off, isn't there? I think. And I think if you're naturally a thinker, you'll probably come back to that. Whatever was really true to your nature will come back. So if you're an artist and you can't be arsed painting when this happens, it'll probably come back. It might be transformed, it might not, I don't know. But it's like, if it's really genuine, authentic to your being, I think it just comes back. And I
I'm
think
actually getting some joy again now. You know, just read a book and actually enjoyed reading a book.
yeah.
It's really nice. I'm so glad.
Yeah, I remember I wouldn't allow myself to listen to some of the music I liked when I was really defended and stuff. And I remember when I woke up and listening to music that moved me and crying my eyes out, and it was fucking awesome. It's lovely. Very nice. And that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I go in and out of phases of music. I have found that what I love, I still absolutely love. I don't think about it as much and play music all the time, but when I do think of it and then I play it, it's just as awesome as it ever was.
Yeah, I don't listen to it a lot, but yeah.
I don't think really, I don't think since that awakening, you know, experience, I don't feel very much of it stuck with me, to be honest. I still feel the veil sort of came down and is still pretty much in place a lot of the time, with just little glimpses now and again. I still quite like the veil analogy. Again, I know a lot of people don't.
I like it.
People do. It
I
just
like
seems to really work for me. It's a bit like rose-tinted spectacles the other way around as well. You know, it's like I've often felt in my life I've just been walking around with dark glasses almost in my life.
No, it makes sense because of that experience I had of seeing the veils and then seeing them gone before I actually had the awakening experience, actually physically seeing that with people. It just really resonated. It's like everybody's awake, but they don't know it. And that was kind of, yeah.
Well, I remember the thing that was so exciting for me when I discovered this message. You know, I'd been wheeling away and seeking down all sorts of rabbit holes for a long time. But one of my, well, again, is it a memory? Was it a dream? But it's, I don't know when, if I remembered it, I don't know when I remembered it, and if it was a memory, when it actually happened, or whether it's a dream. And I you know, and it never made sense to me. It's always stuck with me. I might have said this to you before, I don't know. But I actually remember the symbolism was Jesus, because I guess that was what our family religion was, Christianity. And what I remember, but again, we know memories are like,
Yeah.
being walked down some steps holding Jesus' hand.
Oh, wow.
And I was left at the bottom of the steps.
Uh-huh.
And I knew he was going to go. And I was left there, a tiny little person, but expanding and contracting in the most deliciously uncomfortable kind of way.
Oh,
So
wow.
for being like this. And there was all this excitement and fear. And it's almost like I remember my whatever, the energy
Uh-huh.
that became me, you know, actually felt. But I was quite excited about it because it was going to be an adventure. It was going to be an adventure
Yeah, that makes sense.
in a body.
Yeah.
And that's probably one of my earliest memories. And I think it was that probably started me on the seeking thing from when I was this big, because I just didn't understand it.
What age were you, like, roughly then?
No idea.
Okay, but a kid?
Oh, very much so a kid.
That's amazing. Like,
Yeah.
it sounds like a bit of an NDE as well, doesn't it? That sort of, I don't know, just...
And then a few more times I felt the expanding and contracting, but then obviously the contraction sort of gradually took over, and however much I tried to summon it up, it was such a delicious feeling, I couldn't summon it up anymore, and that was really sad for me. By the time I was about 7 or 8, I think I lost the ability to get back in touch with any of those feelings.
Right. It's funny the way we see these figures from like, you know, Hindu, Christian, you know, all these different religions.
Yeah,
isn't it?
sure, it would have been a different god or prophet or saint or somebody if I'd come from a different culture. And maybe I put that on it afterwards. I mean, I very likely did. I mean, I'm not saying, I had this dream and it was like this, it was like that. The memory, that's just the memory. It could well have been different at the time.
Huh.
I mean, this could be the way I've interpreted it, but it definitely felt like I remember my moment of separation. I mean, I could have had that dream when I was a day old. It could have been when I was 2, it could have been when I was 5.
Yeah, it's strange because memory was supposed to start like about 3 or something, you know, with language, but yet people do remember stuff right back with the NDEs. They can, there's these memories that go back to the womb almost. Like, it don't make sense, but I just take it for granted that it must, you know, that they're telling the truth, because you've got to get a sense of sincerity, don't you? I think when people are talking about stuff.
But it's, I guess, you know, and then every now and again I've had fleeting, warmness experiences, not of recent years, but again when I was younger, I think before perhaps the veil was quite so thin.
Yeah.
But it does seem that, you know, every few years I've had something that gets me back on the
Yeah.
search again, you know. It's like I could never get away from it for very long.
What's the veil analogy you're talking about?
The veil of Maya. It's just the veil of illusion, seeing as the
Maya.
person. How would you put it?
I think there's a Christian bit to it as well, probably when I first heard it, but it's almost like there's a veil, a bit like wearing glasses, dark glasses, so you can't see. It's like looking at the world through smoked glass or something. You don't feel quite of it.
Okay.
And you're not seeing it as it really is. And I've heard it talked about a veil, because sometimes it feels like...
But you're saying you feel like you go from place to place in terms of sometimes you feel like the veil is up or down, and sometimes it's not. Is that what you
I just feel like just for a split second sometimes there's an opening. When I say a veil, it's almost like white. I see it as almost a white, floaty, very thick net curtains, I suppose, is how I visual. Because it is a visual thing, I've turned it into a visual thing.
Is it to protect you or something from the world? Is that what you're describing?
No, it's almost like you want to see through it and you can't. That's and what we're talking about here is nearly always obscured. And when I had that 24-hour thingy, it was like for those 24 hours, somehow the veil just wasn't there. I mean, I don't think I thought about the veil particularly at that moment, but again, looking back, I'm just aware that when people do talk about the veil thing, it always makes sense to me, and I think, yeah, that is how it feels. It feels like can't quite. You know, you can imagine sort of curtains here that you can't reach, and you want to see what's going on outside. You know there's something going on that you want to see, and you just can't. And that's what this feels like, the frustration of, you know that what's being talked about here is it.
True.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that we can't put into words, yeah. The frustration is, however you try, you can't.
I think I can. Yeah.
Does that
I think I understand.
resonate a bit? I don't know. But we all have our different analogies and you know, little pictures and what we feel, don't we?
The veil is going to come over the camera very shortly. What would it disappear? What is it? It's like 2 minutes to... Has anybody else got any pressing questions? Urgent to lead into the pub if you're coming. Should we call it day. Bye bye camera, bye bye Mr. Camera.